Jungkook POV. It all started because of the rain. My driver couldn't come to pick me up because of the heavy downpour. The rain was relentless, and the skies only grew darker with every passing moment. The university campus, once bustling with energy, was now quieting down as students hurried home to escape the rain. One by one, the crowd thinned. Jimin, always lively, approached me with an idea. "Jungkook, let's just head to the bus stop and commute. It's better than waiting around," he suggested. I hesitated but eventually agreed. And that's when I saw him again. He was standing there, under the dim light of the bus stop. His uniform was different from ours, proof that he was from another school. This wasn't the first time I had seen him. Months ago, I had caught sight of him rescuing a kitten stranded in the middle of the street. That moment stuck with me, not just because of the gesture, but because of him. He was strikingly handsome, clean-cut and well-dressed. At first glance, I assumed he must be rich. Everything about him exuded class, from the way he carried himself to the neatness of his appearance. But I was wrong. He wasn't waiting for a chauffeur or a luxury car. I later discovered he worked part-time at the café in front of the bus stop. That realization hit me hard. He wasn't living the life I imagined, yet he held an aura that drew people in. Me, especially. And so, I started frequenting that café. "Jungkook, are you an idiot or something? I told you it's not a good idea to do our project here." Jimin teased loudly, snapping me out of my thoughts. "You just want to stare at your crush. But hey, I can't blame you. He is handsome," he added with a laugh. "Shut up," I muttered, throwing a tissue at Jimin to silence him. My cheeks flushed red as I turned my attention back to him, the boy who unknowingly had my heart. He was at the counter today, just like yesterday. But unlike yesterday, when he was serving tables, he was now handling orders. The red shirt under his white waist apron suited him perfectly, and his neatly combed black hair framed his face in a way that made my heart race. My chest tightened, the familiar drumming of my heartbeat growing louder. Sometimes I wonder, does he even know I exist? Does he notice the way I sit in the same corner every time I visit, just so I can see him clearly? Does he realize how often I get flustered when he's near? Or how my eyes always seem to find him no matter where he is? "Hi, good afternoon," he greeted a customer with his warm smile. I didn't know how long I had been staring at him. Seconds, minutes. Time always seemed to blur when I looked at him. His white, canine-like smile was enough to make my knees weak. And before I knew it, I was blushing furiously. Pulling myself together, I went to the counter to place my order. My voice trembled slightly as I spoke, but he didn't seem to notice. Afterward, I reluctantly returned to my seat, trying to calm the butterflies in my stomach. As usual, my gaze drifted back to him. A pang of jealousy hit me every time I saw him talking to other girls. But what could I do? Walk up to him and say, "Hey, don't talk to them. You're mine?" Ridiculous. Yet there was one thing I noticed. When he smiled at others, it wasn't the same as the smile he gave me. Or was I just imagining it? I sighed, shaking my head at myself. This one-sided crush was messing with my heart and my mind. But even if it was all in my head, I couldn't stop myself from coming back to the café. Because for now, watching him from afar was enough. The next day, at 1 p.m., the afternoon felt calm and slow. We didn't have class since it was a holiday. Instead of staying idle at home, Yu-gyom and I decided to start working on our project. Our professor had instructed us to create something practical. A concrete project that is portable and innovative. It was vague, but we were determined to make progress. When I arrived at the café, Yu was already there waiting for me. He wasn't sitting at my favorite table, which made me sigh in relief. That spot held too much meaning for me. Reluctantly, I sat across from him. He greeted me with his usual wide smile, and I returned it with a small one. "So, any plans?" Yu asked, tapping his pen on the blank notebook in front of him. I turned to him, but my mind was elsewhere. My eyes wandered searching for him, the boy who had been consuming my thoughts for weeks now. Do you have any plans yet?" Yu repeated. His voice pulled me back to reality. I opened my mouth to respond, but just then, my gaze found him. He was here again, this time dressed as a waiter. But something was different about him today. His usual lively demeanor was replaced with a gloomy expression. "Jungkook!" Yu called again, louder this time. "Huh?" "Oh, sorry," I mumbled, snapping out of it. "You're spacing out again," Yu said, frowning slightly. I looked past him and saw him cleaning a table across from us. His back was turned, and he moved quietly, as if lost in his own world. Yu was still talking, but my focus was elsewhere. "Jungkook, would you like to go out with me again next time?" Yu sudden question pulled me back. I blinked at him, confused. What?" "Jungkook, I like you," he confessed, his tone softer than before. The words caught me off guard. Before I could respond, the sound of falling cups startled me. I instinctively stood up, looking to the side. It was him, the boy I had been watching. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, kneeling to pick up the cups. I moved to help him, but he had already gathered them. Thankfully, they weren't glass, but wooden cups, so there was no damage. "Sorry for the inconvenience. Please continue your drinks," he said, bowing slightly before retreating to the staff room. My heart ached as I watched him walk away. Was his boss going to be angry with him? He already looked so down. That day, I rejected Yu confession. I appreciated his feelings, but I couldn't give him false hope when my heart was already beating for someone else. Thankfully, he understood and was grateful for my honesty. He even joked that it saved him from falling deeper for me without direction. From then on, I helped Yu pursue Bam Bam, someone he'd secretly liked for a while. They eventually became a couple, and seeing their happiness made me smile. But my own feelings were becoming harder to contain. 2 days later, I decided it was time to confess. I couldn't keep bottling up everything inside. It was 3 p.m., the usual time I visited the cafe. The late afternoon light painted the place beautifully, making it feel almost magical. I saw him behind the counter, assigned there again. My heart raced as I rehearsed what I wanted to say in my head. With every step closer, my resolve grew stronger. But just as I approached the counter to order, he suddenly stepped away, and another staff member took over. My smile faltered. I watched as someone else walked up to him, pulling him into what seemed like a serious conversation. Disappointment washed over me. My mood affected me so much that, instead of ordering my favorite drink, I absent-mindedly chose something different. It wasn't the confession I had planned, and it left me feeling deflated. I sat in my usual chair, my eyes scanning the cafe for him. And then I saw him, this time carrying a mop. It hit me. He was the janitor for the day. My heart fluttered at the realization. He could do so much. always contributing wherever needed. His versatility made me admire him even more. He's so adorable, I thought, watching him move. But then, I suddenly choked on my drink. I had been sipping it too quickly, completely distracted by his presence. Without realizing it, he had come closer, cleaning near my table. Shocked by his proximity, I instinctively drank faster, only to cough uncontrollably. I tried to steady myself, punching my chest as my coughing echoed loudly across the café. Before I could recover, a bottle of mineral water appeared in front of me. The cap was already twisted open. "Here, drink this. Be careful next time," a voice said. I froze in my seat, holding my breath. It was him. He had just handed me the water. My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. By the time I snapped out of it and looked up to thank him, he was already gone. His voice, though soft, lingered in my mind. Was he out of breath? Did he rush to help me? My mind spiraled with assumptions. I drank the water slowly, smiling to myself. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. I didn't see him again that day. Maybe his shift ended early. I told myself I would confess to him tomorrow. The next day, at the same time and place, I saw him again. This time, he was back to being a waiter. My heart raced with determination as I clutched my bag. I had planned everything. This would be the day I confessed. Before leaving, I discreetly wrote a note on a tissue and left it on the table with my finished drink. The words were simple, but heartfelt. "I like you. Please meet me outside if you feel the same." I walked to my car, parking where I could see the cafe's interior through its glass windows. My nerves were on edge as I watched him move. He approached my table, my heart thundering with anticipation. But then, something shattered inside me. He effortlessly picked up the tissue, glanced at it briefly, and threw it on the tray along with the rest of the mess. He didn't even bother to read it. Tears welled up in my eyes, and before I knew it, they were streaming down my cheeks. I couldn't stop crying, and I was grateful my driver wasn't with me. I must have looked like a fool sobbing alone in the car. Trying to pull myself together, I started the engine and drove away. But just as I passed the side of the cafe, I saw something that made my heart crumble. He was outside hugging a girl. All my hopes, all my feelings, they shattered in an instant. I was just a fool, chasing a dream that was never meant to be. He had someone else, someone he loved.